everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the writer of comics like I Hate Fairyland and Untold Tales of I Hate Fairyland. It's Skottie Young. Thanks for coming on, Skottie.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. Good to talk to you again.
Can I tell you something that's super weird about your intro?
Please do.
I didn't say the word artist.
I know. I recognize that. And I was like, oh, yeah, but that's true right now. I'm not drawing that book. Yeah.
It's very strange to I know you're doing covers.
Yeah.
But as I was saying it, I hadn't even really thought about that. I had thought about the fact you weren't drawing interiors as much, but at the same time, it's really weird doing an intro for you when I kind of think of you purely as a cartoonist or an artist, but you're kind of like writer only right now to some degree.
It's been weird. Yeah. It's that thing, I always feel like, I could really relate to Rick Remender now because, I don't know if a lot of people remember that Rick is an amazing cartoonist. Rick kind of came out, he was always a cartoonist and started writing and is one of my favorite writers. But I think now people probably only think of him as a writer. And I will still in text be like, you gonna draw a book soon? You know what I mean? Like, just because I love Rick's cartooning. But yeah, it's interesting. It's almost been 6 years now since I've been mainly, since I've drawn interiors. And I do a hell of a lot of covers, but I feel more like a writer as my profession, if that makes sense. Even though, like I said, I do dozens and dozens of covers a year and daily sketches and things like that. But yeah, it's an interesting headspace to try to put myself in.
I do think that's a really fascinating thing where a lot of notable writers start as artists or start as writer artists or start as cartoonists or whatever. Frank Miller is a bad example. I think most people still think of him as an artist, but like Rick is a perfect example, or like Brian Michael Bendis, where they came up writing and drawing their own stuff, or like Rick actually would draw in ink books completely separate from his own stuff. And I just had Rick on the podcast. I bet there's a fair amount of listeners that learned Rick was an artist at any point in his life while listening to that podcast. And it's kind of interesting where after a while you start getting thought of as a writer. I'm not going to say that it's going to majorly change your life, like the way that you're perceived, but it is kind of interesting.
I enjoy it. I like it because I feel like it's such a weird thing that people think it'd be odd transition. Like at the beginning of all of our careers, we all pick a path, right? So a person who's never written comics but says they want to be a writer, instantly, as soon as they do a comic, people are like, well, they're a writer. So they believe forevermore that they will be able to write comics. I remember having drawn 100 comics and thousands of comic book pages and read script after script after script and collaborated with the writers and pitched stories and created stories together. And still, when it was time for me to write a comic, people were like, I don't know. Do you understand how storytelling works? And you're like, yeah, I fucking do this a lot. And so, but it's like, yeah, but you just know how to. I was like, that weird assumption that because I can, and the universal, any of us can draw and tell a story visually. But man, as soon as it comes to doing those words, we don't know if we trust you. But at the beginning, it was just like we say you say you're one thing or you say another, and then you have to go prove it. The thing that I do appreciate is that is a little bit how it was. My first reviews of the writing was like, well, at first I went in thinking blonde. It turns out to be pretty good. So you're almost, I don't know if they almost underestimate you so much that do they like it if you're just kind of good. But over the years now, I have more people saying, like kind of what you said, they've been introduced to me as a writer. And I have a lot of people that are like, hey, I love your art, but I really love your writing. So it's fun to have a new transition in your career at my age and this many years in this business. So it at least to me, it feels exciting.
Yeah. You're telling me the guy that draws or wrote Twig also draws comics? What the hell? No. I do think to some degree, this underlines how people kind of perceive artists. And I'm not trying to make this a writer-artist thing, but sure. Fundamentally, what you do when you're doing interiors is storytelling. It is like the other half of writing. And a lot of what you're doing is, it's not writing, but it's not writing, if that makes sense.
Completely. Yeah. That's like, to me, that's like saying that a director doesn't understand storytelling. Like that, the only person in the movie equation that understands storytelling is the writer of the screenplay, which is completely ridiculous. The director has to completely understand how to, they have to understand the rest of it. And I have felt that's what I always felt art was I get a script and then I'm everything else that you would think of in a movie. I'm the director of photography. the director of photography, the set designer, the editor. I mean, because there are scripts that I will have to go through there over my career and say, this doesn't fit and this is too extra, or we need to find something else to steal from and add to this because it's not making sense yet. So I'll add a thing or whatever. So over 10 years, I've been doing this 23 years now. So over those first 10 years, you just really are honing in. And I got in wanting to write and draw my stories. I thought that's what you did because I grew up an Image kid. I didn't think that you went and tried to get a job drawing Spider-Man. I ended up, that's how I started. But I was like, every issue of comic book I drew at Marvel, my friends would tell you, like, all I was saying was like, I can't wait to write and draw my own Image book, So every move that I was making was watching, Blu-ray behind the scenes, commentaries, and all of that, just soaking in storytelling, soaking in writing, listen to writers' podcasts. I mean, I think I listened to every episode of Script Notes for years, the Screenplay podcast with John August. And so, yeah, it's interesting when you go over where you're like, yeah, as an artist, you've not just learned how to craft everything visually. You really have if you're open to it, there's a real chance to become a master storyteller because of how much you understand our medium. Because our medium has a ton to do, obviously, with writing and story structure, but also spatial relations between that. Like, we have to fit this usually in a 20-page increments and these very specific size pages. And as an artist, what I've realized was, as a writer, so much of what I learned on the spatial side of things informed what I can write and what I can fit and what I can't. So that helped me, I think, more once I jumped over to the other side.
I remember talking to an artist who also became a writer. I mean, they're both still, and they were saying something along the lines of, like, they talked to a legendary writer who advised them that, like, every artist overwrites when they start, so try to dial it back. And, like, I imagine a lot of that has to do with the spatial stuff, where it's just like, oh no, I have a brick of text that I have to try to fit in over an artist who's not me. This sucks.
Totally. It was really. I remember when I first jumped over, I thought, hey, I'll just thumbnail out the story as I've got the general idea of what I want to do, and I'll kind of, like, that's how animation is usually written, right? Like, Adventure Time is written in storyboards. It's not really they kind of script it after, where it's kind of told through visuals. And a lot of episodic animation is works like that. And I just thought, oh, I'll just can do that because I can draw, so I'll just skip a whole step, like. And what happened was I was probably underwriting, but I was overdrawing. I was like, okay, he picks the cup up and then he brings the cup to his mouth. So I'm animating it, and I'm like, God, that was 5 pages of drinking coffee or whatever, because I'm so in love with every aspect of the art. But yes, there definitely isn't. At the beginning, there was a insecurity to feel like you need to overprove yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't just write a comic. I've got to blow your fucking mind. Like, I have to come out of this gate, and once you let go of that, you're like, okay, never. And, it takes X amount of scripts or whatever till you're finally comfortable to where you realize, like, oh, this is just comics. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to be Alan Moore. Like, and that's what you kind of, or at least I can't say for everybody, that's kind of how I was feeling. Like, I needed to come out proving that I was Frank Miller, like, I needed to be Mike Mignola, like, right out of the gate. And then eventually I'm like, I don't know, I'm just going to be me. Like, I can't, that's stressing me out too much.
I'm not to, like, really sell out my Twig fanboyness, but I kind of feel like Twig was where I really felt like you'd always, like, you were good, but I feel like Twig, you really got comfortable. And, like, it was just, like, it felt very natural. And, like, I Hate Fairyland felt very you, but Twig felt just like it was just a great comic, irregardless of who was, like, writing it. And, like,
right.
I don't know, it felt different in that way.
Yeah, I mean, Twig is definitely a handful of projects away from where I started on I Hate Fairyland, where I think each one, Twig was one that was, I think specifically was one where and maybe it's because of the nature of the character, the visuals. Maybe it's because, working with Kyle so closely here in town, and a lot of it here in the same studio, where I didn't feel compelled to have to be the voice of Twig. Like, Fairyland's a humor book, so of course my voice is going to come through because that's who I am, and she is very much my id in a lot of ways. And then Middle West is going to have a little bit of that because it's very kind of, there's a lot of my life in that book. I think Me, You Love in the Dark is where I start to feel comfortable going away from just being my voice because I'm trying to get a mood. And then Twig and the Me, You Love in the Dark were very made at the same time. So I feel like they were two projects where I was feeling more comfortable with leaving, Skottie Young's audible voice out of it and just saying, and there was so much. Kyle's imagination is so great that it was very easy for me to there are a lot of times I'd write a ton of shit and then realize like I don't need to put any of these words in because Kyle has it. Like, and that's where I feel like we made a true comic book. Like, this is what comic book collaboration should be. It shouldn't be me going in and just like vomiting words everywhere and then an artist trying to find little pockets to have a piece of art in between the balloons. It should be 5 pages of just beauty, and then I'll come in and be like, "Holy cat!" Like, "Oh, watch out!" Or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's fun because it is a visual medium. I'm an artist. I love writing for other artists, and it's probably probably my biggest strengths as a writer is understanding how somebody works. And it's easy for me to look at Kyle's comics and go, "This is how he's going to draw this comic." Or Umberto on Strange Academy. I've memorized how Umberto draws comics. I've memorized the amount of times I would just write Umberto reaction panel. And he would know, right? And it'd be 6 or 7 heads, and each one of them has a crazy, but I've just memorized those since I was in high school and reading his comics. So it's like, I'm such a visual person and I memorize all that stuff and I can split it up depending on who I'm working with. So that's a really fun thing about collaboration.
Yeah. So the last time you did interiors was the end of I Hate Fairyland, right?
Yeah. The first run, I did 21 issues there. So when I finished that series was my last interior. I did do those Image comic strips for
right. Yeah.
But again, I count that more as a comic strip. And that was me. I think maybe you and I might have talked about this before. I can't remember, but I always wanted to do a Sunday comic or a comic strip. And so when Eric hit me up, I was like, oh, this is a good chance to just pretend that I'm one of those guys, that I'm a Watterson for a hot minute,
Yeah. All of this is kind of why I wanted to chat, just because I find you to be in this very interesting moment where there's not as much from you on stands right now. I mean, there's I Hate Fairyland and the Untold Tales of I Hate Fairyland. And then there's covers. There's no interiors. You're doing a ton of stuff for Stupid Fresh Mess. Anybody who subscribes to your newsletter knows all about that. But it's one of these moments where there's 2 things that are possible. Actually, there's a shitload of things that are possible, but there's 2 prominent things that are possible. We're in one of those moments between moments where you have something cooking and we don't know what it is,
right?
Or you're genuinely shifting gears a bit. I'm sure you can't speak to the former too much, but where are you at these days?
It's interesting that you asked because I think everybody in my life would be back here. I'm sure if Megan doesn't have her headphones on, she will be nodding her head right now. Where I'm in a real weird moment of like, where the fuck am I?
Yeah.
Like, I am in that moment right now. I mean, I have Fairyland going. I have 3 projects working on where as writer. One I'm done with my part. So Jorge Corona and I have a project now. He is currently inking the 3rd issue of, and I've written all of it. So we haven't announced that yet. It's amazing. I mean, Jorge's artwork on it is absolutely bananas. I'm not going to say anything about that. I'll wait and announce that when we get there.
Sure.
But that is working right now, and it'll be our same team, Nate Picos. Nate is doing his thing, which is handcraft. Like, he's hand creating fonts for every aspect of the book. So, and Jean's coloring. Jean-Francois Billy is coloring it. So we have a lot that's going, which is always weird, right? Because nobody knows that's happening in the background. So that's pretty close to being done, and it'll be out in either spring or early summer. And then Kyle and I are working on Twig, the follow-up to Twig.
Mm-hmm.
That's next up on my plate while on the side of Fairyland. And then, I'm just going to put this out there. I won't say what it is or what the title is or go into too much detail because we've not dove too much, but I am writing a short project with Jim Mahfood.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Jim's one of my really close buddies and has been for a billion years. And he just moved back to Kansas City in the recent months. Like, he went to college here 20 some years ago. And has been in LA for a long time, went to Portland, and he's originally from St. Louis, and he actually moved back to Kansas City. So he's a local now and a homie. And we had gotten to talking about a year ago about doing something together, and he kind of pitched me an idea, and I was like, oh, that's very much a Jim Ma food book. I don't think that you need me for that. I was like, I want to do a project with you, and I have a very specific goal that I would like to get out of a project with you and I. And I'll get more into that when we get closer to that, because I don't want to ruin what the subject matter is. But so those things are my things on deck currently. One other thing that's not cooked up yet, so I won't even say who, but those are my current things as writer. And so the other thing of say, where am I, is like, what's the next thing that I'm doing on my own? Because I have to. Like, it's now been long enough where I have to do that thing, right? Like,
it gets to the point. I mean, I'm not to like make it seem weirder than it is, but it's unusual to not see something from you for this long.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, is it feels unusual. Like, it is getting to that existential place for me where I'm having issues. Like, I'm talking to my goddamn therapist about it and shit. Right. You know what I mean? Like, because it is weird I love working with my co-creators on these other books. These are, it's amazing. I love being able to tell stories that my art doesn't necessarily fit with. And it lets me be a different kind of creator, a freer creator. But I do miss that sitting down in a room alone and doing and making a thing that's all me. So my goal is, most likely that's some sort of Boy at the End project. It's got to be what it is. It's such a fucking white whale of a project for me.
I was going to say, the people are talking. I had several patron questions of like, what's up with Boy at the End? What's up?
Oh, for real?
Yeah. Like, I had one person who was like, you've done a masterful. It was Tom Drennan. He was a patron, and he said, you have done a masterful job building demand for Boy at the End over the years, but he wanted to know how you know when it's time to go for it or go with it. And like, it's tough.
It is. It's absolutely tough because.
Wait, really quick for listeners. Boy at the End is an ongoing, per your newsletter, an ongoing project /subject/ hopefully a book someday. You've been drawing art for a long time, right?
Long time, a decade probably, over 10 years. Yes, that's exactly it. It started off as a doodle of a rabbit with a gas mask on.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll just make a rabbit comic. There was no story there, but I liked the drawing. And then I whited out the ears, and I was like, oh, this is like a cool little kid with the gas mask. And I'm a big Sean Tan fan and a big Sam Keith fan and Dr. Seuss. And so I was like, wow, like, what if I took this little like gas mask kid and put him in a weird Seussian Sam Keith, which Sam Keith and Seuss share a lot of DNA. What if I just did this weird world that this kid lives in? And then I had a story for it. The story was way more Middle West, actually. The original Boy at the End story that the story space that he occupied was very much Boy at the End, or was Middle West. But right as I got ready to start that story, my dad passed away, which people who have read Middle West understand it's completely about my, relationship between father and son, and a lot of my relationship. And so I kind of paused it, and I was like, I can't tell this story right now because I just felt mean, because my dad and I got along great by the time he passed away. So, but over the years, once I got Middle West, or over the years, Boy became something different. He wasn't about that story anymore. He became more about exploring emotion and exploring questions, and kind of just being like, I don't know what to draw today, but I'm feeling this. Let me see if I can find like a universal way to pose a question or present a feeling to people. And then, people started reacting to this character over the years. So he's really kind of been my art block helper, therapist. He's a cipher for a lot of things. And of course, everybody asks for a book, and I'm like, yeah, but man, because of what he's become, he's like such this big element that it's been hard to figure out, like, how do I boil that down into a story?
Yeah.
What I've realized is I don't think that's going to be what it is. Like, I don't know that it will be a beginning, middle, and end story. I think it most likely is going to be this collection of shorts and essays and poems and songs and whatever that I feel like making. And that also feels like a beast to try to be like, is this a thing? And basically what I have to do is just stop thinking about it as a product and just make what I want to make. So that's where I'm at kind of with that project. But this is the farthest I've gotten to actually finally pulling the trigger on it, for sure, is like mapping out, like, what do I need to check off on, so Twig follow up, get there, Jim's project going, and then they've got this long runway where I just want to like, and a lot of what we're doing here at Stupid Fresh Mess is to, also build the financial stability to be able to take the risk on a weird, esoteric kind of outside the box feely all the feels book, and not necessarily have to live or die on the sales of it.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Looking for the right place to read digital comics? You can find it at Omnibus. Omnibus is a modern digital comic book store and reader app carrying your favorite single issues, volumes, and omnibuses, all day and date. It's just like a comic shop where you pay per book, but digital. Omnibus has even upped its game lately, as they've added a web reader in store on top of its iPad version, with iPhone and Android coming soon. Looking for an ideal digital comic store, but with an excellent shopping and reading experience? One that uses novel discovery features to help fans find their next new favorite book? And one that features many of the best comics and publishers in comics today, including publishers like Image, Boom, Dark Horse, and more? You can find all that on Omnibus. Visit the web store or download the app today at omnibus.app. And now, back to the show. Tom, actually, the patron who specifically asked that question had another question about expectations paralysis and how like that might differ on something that never existed in the world versus something like Deadpool or Spider-Man. But it's interesting because expectation paralysis is something that kind of goes both ways, where it's like others might have that expectation of like, oh, this is way different. Like, do I still like this? But also you have the expectation, right? Of like, I want this to be this, or I want this to be this. But sometimes the story, maybe a boy at the end started off as X, but now it's Y, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You're dead on. And there's the expectation paralysis on many fronts. Like I said this, I'll go to something very surface level to speak to that. And I think this is just starts showing up throughout my career. And I think through everybody's life in general. But like 2010 came along. I had never in my life considered the Eisner Awards. I mean, and not in that flippant fucking bullshit way that everybody's like, oh, I don't care about awards. No, I mean, I like to be recognized for stuff. It's cool. I just like genuinely was like, that is a thing for other people. It's like, it's so high up there for like the highbrow creators that I love,
right? That
I don't even have it on my bucket list as a thing to strive for. So getting nominated in 2010 and winning the 2 awards blew my mind, because it genuinely was like, this doesn't happen for me. I'm like the cartoony guy that kept having people tell me like, you're too cartoony, you're not going to make it in this business. Like 2011 comes along, all of a sudden I have expectations now, and you're literally frozen. You're like, well, what I got to do? And you don't think that's going to happen because you didn't care in the first place. Mm-hmm. You didn't care in that way that you didn't know to care. And then all of a sudden it happened, and you're like, now I'm paralyzed. I don't know how to make anything. Your brain's telling you make another Eisner winning thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then you're like, but that's not how I got here. Like and it's the same thing. It's like Fairyland comes out and it works and it sells well, and then you're like. Or Twig's a great example. Like Twig's a book that Kyle and I did not think was going to break down the financial barriers. We actually thought like, well, let's do this little indulgent, fun kid book, and kind of not kid book, but looks like a kid book and whatever. Let's just have some fun. Ends up blowing our socks off as far as like the reception. And then we're like, oh shit. And so you do absolutely go through that each time you make a thing and it works. You're excited, but then you're also like, oh, how do I keep that up? I mean, it's the sophomore slump situation, right? Like every band we've ever liked, we're like, well, how's that follow-up album going to be though?
Yeah. It's not just, I mean, it's like throughout your entire career, it's like, oh my God, they changed their sound so much. Do I really like Skottie Young anymore? I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Like I have said this in the studio this week, like, you do get to that place. It was like, do they like the draw? Like I'm doing this cover. Do you like that cover? Or do you like that I did that cover? Do you like the art? Or do you like the Garbage Pail Kid side of it? Like that it's a collectible. You don't know.
And here's like another interesting thing is like, you're not the same person you were when you first started drawing comics. And granted, your art has evolved a lot, but like, I'm not saying this is a reason why you're not drawing, but do you still love the exact way you draw? Do you want to find different ways to draw? Like A Boy at the End seems like even if it's the same style, it's going to be a different vibe.
Oh, it's going to be a completely different vibe. And that's the thing is, that's a little scary as well. It's like, you guys are going to get Boy at the End, but it's not going to look like Fairyland, and it's not going to look like Rocket Raccoon, and it's not going to look like Oz. It's going to be different. Like it's going to be something else. And yeah, that's where the hope is like, God, like you guys follow me from Marvel cover to Marvel cover. I hope you guys are cool with coming over here and doing this thing. But that's where I'm like trying to build a situation up to where I can just sit in a place and make a thing and just be happy with the thing I made. And if people jump on, they do. If they don't, it's okay too. I think that's the reason for the so many legs under my tables now, is to make sure that I can get to a place and take risks and not feel like I just have to do 5-issue series after 5-issue series of genre bender meets genre bender and smash together and try to make, like that gets exhausting. You want to feel like a kid and you want to feel like you're playing pretend,
You brought up Watterson earlier, and it is funny. This is like a month and a half after he just released his first thing in like 20 plus years. Yeah. And it's funny. I was reading, I wasn't sure how people reacted to it. I haven't read it yet. The Mysteries is the name of the book, I think it is. And there was like this Goodreads, all these Goodreads reviews where people are like, I was a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes, and like, this is crazy. And it's funny. It's just look at the cover. I mean, like, why would you think this is like anything like Calvin and Hobbes?
Yes, like it's not a follow-up, guys. It's not his return. Like, it's exactly what we're talking about is like it's him scratching a different a different creative itch.
So my conspiracy brain has been like kind of compiling a lot of different things you've been doing into like I think Skottie's cooking something up right now, because you had the thing in your newsletter where you talked about how you were doing something big with Marvel in 2004 or 2024. The big thing though was, you got new headshots. When you got new headshots, I was like, oh shit, what's Skottie doing?
That's actually, honestly, that's not even that was just for our new, like, we're trying to relaunch the website, like a little, like our Squarespace website was literally me banging around on Squarespace when we were launching the company, like up until the morning we launched. All of us trying to figure out a way to shoehorn our little interweb knowledge into Squarespace. And for so long we've been talking about like rebuilding the site with a more robust store and all the stuff, and finally we got to it. And I was like, oh god, I gotta go get some, we're gonna put some photos of me on the website and draw some stuff on them. So yeah, it's not the headshots weren't as exciting, the reasoning wasn't as exciting as that, but man, they turned out pretty cool. yeah
I'm gonna have to take that picture off of my Skottie Young conspiracy theory wall.
Take the string, you're gonna have to unwind that string.
It's done, that one's dead. I did want to talk about Stupid Fresh Mess. So Stupid Fresh Mess is your company. You have SkottieYoung.com, which is your store and everything. You're doing a ton there. Has that become a much bigger part of what you do than you could have ever imagined? Or is it exactly what you imagined?
It's exactly what I imagined. It is succeeding far beyond my expectations.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a sustainable thing that kind of underwrites your ability to take risks, which is rare in comics.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what I initially thought would be like a ancillary income, a little extra income from selling, prints or signed, some signed trades from whatever, has become kind of like my main stream of income to a big degree. And yes, allows me to kind of look at the next year, and let's us as a company sit down and really start deciding like, oh, what do we want to do? Which was always the goal. Like my main goal was like, I don't want to just open up a place where I sell prints of covers that you can get. Like we want to do fun drops and do screen prints, and we want to create some fun apparel and do. So we have our first hats rolling out here soon, where we got some cool, like a trucker hat and a snapback, and doing some fun stuff there. But yeah, like luckily with Megan and her skill set and her enthusiasm, and Megan Hodges, who runs the company, and John, who is just like, his brain, the way that he just functions and ships so many fucking packages all the time. And we started to branch out and hire other people now, but I mean, up until now, it's pretty much been the three of us. I come in this room and make stuff, and then they take it and make magic with it. What really kind of changed it for us was the exclusives. Like retail exclusives. Retailers would reach out to me over the years and they'd want to cover for just their store. And then obviously on the image side, retailers are coming to me wanting to do covers for Fairyland or Twig. And then once we realized like, oh, well, we have a machine here, we can actually become a retailer and start doing our own exclusive covers for books that I'm into. So when Jim relaunched Girl Scouts, I was like, oh, cool, let's do a cover for Jim's Girl Scouts that you can only get here. Most recently, we did Transformers #1, which has been huge.
Oh, yeah.
I did my first Batman cover.
Yeah. First DC work, isn't it?
First DC work ever. My first actual published DC stuff.
Well, and that was Batman Offworld, and you did like 3 different covers, right? It was like the regular, the Virgin, and the foil.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So really quick, how does that work? It's like, is it you have to order 500? Like, is there a magic number or something you have to get to?
Well, it's different for everybody, right? So Image proper is 500. The publishers that like Marvel and DC are like in the thousands. It's a buy-in. Like you've got to be prepared to fail and that be okay and it not crush you. Because if you're not really ready, you have to order enough to where if it goes bad, it's not cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But that's kind of the fun. It's like it is a big gamble, but we're pretty calculated on what we're going to do and what we're going to do. And then when it works, it's the kind of thing that sets things up in a way that allows me then to make some decisions. To me, it's about creating that balance of let's figure out and ride this commerce wave in a way that now I can go in a room, shut the door and be a weirdo creator, like do my Boy at the End, which 2 years ago, I didn't do it Boy at the End because we didn't have this going like that. Like I didn't feel confident that, if I go and spend the next year making this thing, I think that's what I want people to understand what I'm saying. I hope they don't think that I just need everything to sell a ton. That's not what I mean. I mean, if I disappear for a year to make something, that's a year of my time that I'm not getting paid, right? Because Boy at the End I don't get a page rate for that. It's something that I'm going to do. Like I Hate Fairyland was something I just did. Like I worked at Marvel and on the side did Fairyland. I got a page rate for that. Like until that book sold, I didn't see a dollar. So like 4 issues of that, and that's how Image books work, right?
Well, and it's tough too because it's tough to get an advance on a book that you can't even really say what is yet.
Right. And so for I could go to publishers and they would give me a trunk load of money to make Boy at the End and they'd publish it, but they'd also lay hands on it, right? And they'd own it and they have say and they don't have some rights. And I like to own everything. And so something like Boy at the End, we kind of build a solid business structure to do exclusives and prints and hats and store signings and conventions, and we can get all that stuff going, then it's great infrastructure for me to be able to kind of Homer Simpson into the bushes for a year and get really weird with it, which I think is what we all want as readers. Listen, I love Michael Bay movies. I do. I'm not ever going to talk shit, but I like that just as much as I like Beasts of the Southern Wild, like I want a little mixture of those. And so I make my Michael Bay comics and I also want to go make my Beasts of the Southern Wilds comic. I want to go make Mud. I want to go make something that I don't know will work and not care. And I think that's so to kind of be that weirdo who's like on this side, let's figure out the commerce of it so we can go be the weirdo. And it's kind of, I guess, in Hollywood, the best way we can say is it's the one for them, one for, the one for them, one for you scenario, which is, all right, I'll go make the commercial thing and then I'll come back and make the weirdo, like a tour thing. And that's kind of where I'm hoping to be able to get. And that's where with me and my awesome team here at Stupid Fresh Mess has been able to really start doing that.
There's 2 things I want to say. One, Beasts of the Southern Wild, all-time underrated soundtrack. The score is unbelievable. Really good stuff. It's amazing. Yeah. The other thing is I don't think anybody's probably misunderstanding you, but just to clarify, like this stuff is not abnormal. Basically, if you look at any comic creator, even like a lot of the bigger ones, everything they're doing today is to sustain themselves long enough so they can make the next thing.
Yes.
And that's basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep that process going. You're trying to keep that ball rolling. So if you come out of the next year and you do a Boy at the End and like, let's just say it bombs, it just doesn't do anything. You're not going to be like, I can't feed my family.
Correct. That's it. And that was the thing is trying to figure out how can we build multiple avenues and revenue streams to where I can take a year off from anything that pays me for the making of a thing or whatever time I take off. But just saying like, here's what mostly happens for all of us, right? Like while we're making these things, we've got to start thinking about these other things. It's weird because you don't give yourself a chance to like be still, right? Like
marinate in the idea.
So we put Post-it notes up here on the studio wall. And one is from Neil Gaiman, which he says, somebody said, hey, you want to be a writer? And he said, oh, great. Then go get bored. Like getting bored is such a important part of us creating the new thing. it's so hard for us as comic book creators because usually we don't get the chance to be bored. We're making 5 things and we got to start thinking about making the next 5 things. And so I think with finding a group of great, talented people that we trust here, that I'm very excited because they are so passionate about making things and selling things and doing all that, that they give me the freedom. In fact, Megan forces me to keep hands off of things out there. Like I will literally, because I'm an extrovert and I just want to go talk to people, I'll be like, hey, what do you guys do? It's just like, you need to go away, like go make stuff, and so that has been the great thing to come out of this was, when I hired Megan on, I was like, hey, do you want to come on and like sell some original art? And we kind of sell some prints, like that's what my company is. And all of a sudden at the end of this now, it's like, it's such a different beast, where we're doing so many different things, whether it's exclusives or CGC slabbing and heading down to CGC a couple times a year and really getting to know them. And actually we just got back from Orlando or Sarasota, where we've cooked up a whole nother really cool line of business with CGC that they had an idea for that we're going to be rolling out here soon. So things like that, it's like finding that way to do something once and see if it can keep working for you while you go away and be the nerdy, while I can go away and be the nerdy arty kid, the art school kid again.
Okay, so you kind of alluded to this earlier and you're kind of touching on it there. I want to bring up one thing in specific related to all this. Another product line you did, Unoriginal Art, which was an idea by your shipping master, John. The name was from Megan.
The name was from me.
Oh, the name was from you. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a line of signed and numbered prints that are raw scans of some of your most notable covers.
Yep.
And it's really smart. It's really smart because, frankly, the original art market has become nightmarishly expensive for all humans, let alone like the people who really just can't afford it.
It's too expensive for me.
It's crazy. It's out of control. I mean, I understand. It's like, I'm happy that the artists get to make money on it, but at the same time, it's like, it definitely priced me out of the market, for example. But I am curious as to how much of all of this is you and your team thinking about collectors and finding new ways to entice and excite them. Like, is that something you guys are talking about a lot and trying to like think of the next thing to like, what can we do that will bring joy to these people's lives effectively?
That's number one. Yeah, that's exactly it. We have actually I know that I have said no to some things because I don't like the idea of it just being a thing to grab some loot.
Yeah, like it's predatory or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of things out there that we could push buttons on and make it happen. But I just like, and we get hit up by a lot of companies being like, let's do this. And I was like, well, I'm not really like just selling tchotchkes is not my thing. Like, it's not what I'm here for. Like, I like making cool things for people who want cool things. If that starts to like toe that line of collectability, that's also cool, but I won't ever just do it to be like, I'm not going to be like, no, guys, trust me. This gold plated keychain thing that also is a lighter, like, I don't need, that's not a thing.
I'm interested.
I'd buy one. But so Unoriginal Art was one of those really great moments where, like you said, like original art's so expensive. And John just kind of so the mornings, what we'll do is, for people who don't know, like I've got my office, Megan has an office, then we have a really big open area with TV and PlayStation and a big signing table, and then John has a shipping department. And so a lot of times in the lounge in the mornings, we'll be having coffee and we're just chatting, or midday around lunch or whatever, we just start talking about a movie, or did you see this guy online or whatever, right? And from that, ideas will come, or we'll specifically be like, hey, let's talk Tuesday and see if we have any new ideas for things we could launch. And John, I can't remember what prompted him, but he was like, he brought up the idea of making some raw scans of the original art and just selling them as prints. And I was like, oh my God, that is, Megan was like, that's a great idea. We both were like, holy shit, fantastic. Then I was like, I am such a name junkie.
Yeah.
Like, I just love like The Me You Love in the Dark. I had that name before I had the whole story. And then I was like, well, this is the best name I've ever thought of. And so Unoriginal Art just came up like right away. Like within the 10 minutes of us talking about this, it went from John said we should do it. I had the Unoriginal Art name. Megan's already talking to the printer. And we're sending an email out to a friend to help us design the blue lines. And we had the idea for the joke, the jokes. I don't know if you've seen them. But like, on blue line comic book paper, it's like, here's the trim line. Don't go beyond this and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of information for publishing.
Yeah. You made jokes around there?
We made jokes about it.
Oh,
Be
I
like,
didn't see
hey,
that.
It's like, hey, this is unoriginal art. It's not original art. If you paid original art prices, you got duped. Like, we're just, and making sure that we put a lot of places like, hey, this is fake. It's not real. That was one where we were just really fucking excited to offer a cool thing and a limited fashion. We just thought it was fun. Like, we didn't know that it would be worth much. We didn't know if people react, how people react to it. But man, what a fun idea. It ended up, going over really well. And we've got another line that we're going to pump out here soon. But
oh my God.
Did you see it?
I'm seeing it right now. It's so funny. God, that is so great. I mean, that's the stuff, though. It's like those little things, the attention to detail things really can sometimes make it really special.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for us, that's our version of doing a skit, like a comedy troupe doing skits. We are here to have fun and make things and entertain you throughout. And that's where, like you said, do we come up with stuff that we can entice the people? The greatest thing about this company is the community that has kind of built around it and behind it and holding it up. Again, I've got to give Megan and John tons of props, especially Megan, who's such a part of communicating with that community hands-on. Like, I don't think people understand, like, we ship out thousands of packages from this building, and it is me and it is Megan and it is John. We don't have a third-party fulfillment center. We don't have off-site customer service. Like, if you email, you're definitely getting one of us to talk. And mostly it's going to be Megan and John. I mean, Megan really is somebody who, she cares that they walk away happy. Like, like every single person. So we carry that over into when we start thinking about what we're going to sell as well. Like, we just don't feel good ever about just being like, well, this is how everybody makes money. Let's try to make money. And a lot of it's also, I want to do it. Like, we've done some exclusive covers, not because that would be a banger, that it's going to like crash up, but I just want to do it for that book. It looks cool. Like Bloody Step by Bloody Step. I don't know how that book was going to sell, but man, what a beautiful book.
Yeah.
And what an amazing comic,
Girl Scouts is a good example of that. I mean, like, this isn't me, like, casting aspersions about Jim Mahfood, who's amazing, but at the same time, it's like Jim Mahfood is not Batman. And so it's like, you could probably make a mint just making print after print of Batman, but doing an exclusive cover of Girl Scouts means something to you.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with Battle Chasers. Like, Battle Chasers is one of my favorite comics. It helped get me here. It was like one of the first comics I ever had signed by, I stood in line at Chicago Wizard World to get my Battle Chaser signed by Joe Mad, and so, like, all these years later, Joe being like, hey, you want to do a Battle Chasers cover? I'm like, oh my God, So yeah, this is still all about us having fun, and it's really exciting for me to see Megan and John and how much love that they have for it. Because Megan's still relatively new to the world of comics. So it's like watching it's like watching the younger version of us back when we first started, be like, oh, look at this. Now we're all old and grizzled and jaded. But so it's fun to have some new energy around me every single day, reminding me, like, this is a pretty fucking cool job that we have, like a really fucking cool job.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. We're heading into the end of the year, but the campaigns keep launching on Zoop. There's still time to support the legendary Howard Chaykin's campaign and descendant of Bram Stoker, Dacre Stoker's Tale of Dracula, and keeping it spooky as Ghosts from Cullen Bunn and Shannon Eric Denton. Finally, you do not want to miss out on the launch of an artisan edition book featuring John Buscema, Gil Kane, Barry Windsor-Smith, and other A-list artists. Head over to zoop.gg to support the live campaigns and sign up for the ones coming soon. It takes less than 30 seconds to create an account, and the e-commerce style checkout is easy and intuitive. Add multiple rewards and add-ons into your cart, provide some info during checkout, and you're done. No confusing additional steps in finalizing your pledge, and no post-campaign surveys. And of course, every creator appreciates your support. For creators looking to crowdfund your project, Zoop is currently open for submissions. Email them at hello@wearezoop.com to start a campaign. And now, back to the show. It does seem like that is kind of the prevailing theme to everything you're doing right now. It seems like you're just having fun, whether it's like I Hate Fairyland, like writing for Brett, or It's like doing all this stuff with Stupid Fresh Mess, or all the other projects you have coming up. It seems like you're just, I don't know. I think was it Marie Kondo that had like Follow Your Joy or whatever it is? Like, it's just, that's your vibe right now.
It's so important, dude. We did something, and I won't say it. I don't want to get shit talking, but we did a thing, for a hot minute, it was not, everybody was not very happy. Like, it was,
Sure.
the vibe was a little off, right? And I just said, I don't care. I came in one day after several days of a situation, and I was just like, I don't care how much money, potential money, this situation will have. If it keeps us not having fun, then we're just not going to do it. Like,
Yeah.
and and that was really the bottom line, was like, we've got to be enjoying our days. And if this doesn't work, that's okay. We'll find a different way to enjoy it. Like, we don't ever have to feel trapped into any situation because the market's saying a thing, or the new hotness is this, or whatever. If we try it and it doesn't make us happy and we're not having fun, let's just shut that down and we'll figure it out. And that's another thing about us, making sure that we have many things going on at once, where no one thing is going to crush us if it doesn't work out, because I do feel like I made the weird choice to try to be a comic book creator when I was in my 20s, didn't go to college, put it all on this. It worked. It was really hard and took a lot of years for it to work. That's the other thing, right? Everybody's like, they'll hear this interview now and they'll be like, oh, you've been doing this version of it for 23 years. And you're like, no, there was a lot of hungry years out there.
I'm trying to remember the first time I saw your art. I feel like it was like a New Warriors issue or something like that.
Yeah, 2000. That was 2006. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I'm sure you could attest to this. That was a much different version of you, artistically, as much as just reputational. It was like, was it Oz when kind of things really started coming together?
If you even looked and did some like rough estimation calculation, Oz would be the 10,000 hours, right? If you're a Malcolm Gladwell person, like, it probably is when I hit that Zen moment of like, oh shit, I figured this out. Like, I'm not scared of the drawing table anymore. I draw like me, not like Chris and Umberto and Sam and all these other, my favorite people. I'm just kind of me now. And it just happens kind of like that. Like, but yeah, that Oz moment right there about 2008, 2009-ish, and then into 2010, to me, is the real dividing line of where I was trying to do something. And then after that was doing it, and that's, to me, I still feel that way, but the writing, jumping into the writing stuff over the years and then kind of more full-time in 2018 is when I felt like a reinvigoration of like the youthful side of being a creator again, because it's such a new landscape and challenge. So yeah, it's fun.
It's interesting. Like, this kind of brings us a little bit full circle, but I kind of feel like with writing and everything, it may have been new to you. And like with Stupid Fresh Mess, and like with all the, like, you decided to do a exclusive cover for Girl Scouts, or you decided to do this, or you decided to do that. You've gotten to a point where people trust that if you're going to do something, it's cool for a reason, and it's something you really care about. And so it's like, it's easier to buy in on like, I don't know about this Twig book, but Skottie's doing it, and I like Skottie's, so I'm probably going to like it.
That's the lucky, I say lucky, but I mean, yeah, that's the place that I'm very grateful to being enjoying right now, which is, I've worked really hard over the years, and I've had a great group of people following me over those years and jumping in and having fun with me as far as readers and fans of my art go, that the idea that they are like, fuck yeah, let's just trust them and let's follow and see where this goes is such a cool thing. Again, kind of the Malcolm Gladwell thing, right? Like, you're not aiming for 2 million fans. If you just get 1,000 really hardcore ones, you can have a pretty good life,
Yeah.
That's kind of been my mentality over since I read that a number of years ago, which is just like, man, let's just really hyper focus on making the best stuff that we can, and just really please like a small group of diehards, and if it gets bigger, that's great. Like, I'm not saying we're turning people away, but if you micro focus a little bit more on just like, man, look how happy these people are, it's a lot more active. The back and forth is a lot more active, where, if it gets too much of a passive following, it gets very difficult to even know like what's being heard or read or seen or whatever,
It's interesting to think about all this through the prism of like the Substack program thing that you did, where ultimately it's like, I'm trying to say this in the nicest way possible. It's like, it was a 1-year thing that was really cool. But if there was one thing that it did a lot for you, it gave you kind of a focal point for people to follow you, and to like, I'm like a free subscriber, and I can like recite like, oh, Skottie's going to LA Comic Con, Skottie's got a project in 2024 with Marvel, he's got all this stuff, and it's like a one-stop shop where it's like, this is what Skottie's doing, if you want to get this cool stuff, go here. And it's kind of the fulcrum for your drops, it's the fulcrum for your presences, it's the fulcrum for your projects. And especially in like 2023 when social media is like absolutely crumbling. It's like extremely advantageous to have something like that.
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, I tell everybody all the time, like a newsletter is like the end all be all of what you have, because again, there's ownership. Like you own your content. You want to own your content. You never know when these companies are going to go sell themselves or change an algorithm or whatever that's going to start blocking you from talking to your people. Like, and that's really what you want to, you don't want to just talk to your people. You want to hear from your people, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, the Substack thing was so interesting where, you know, it had one goal in mind, and, you know, I don't know that the original intended goal of Substack broke the doors off for us. I know that it's definitely worked out for some people, and you and I talked a lot about that when you were doing your big piece on that. But it ended up being, you know, as a newsletter and a place to still house all our content and interact with people and share. And the app's been getting, you know, they're adding, the cool thing about Substack, they add a lot of features. Like they keep adding cool features. So it's been a really great since the pro thing kind of ended. And it is, like you said, it is kind of where we communicate with everybody and let everybody know where we'll be and how we're doing everything. And it's where I love it, because it's where people get to actually hear and kind of learn our voices. You know, like they know what they're going to get from me and the kind of things, you know, pieces I'm going to share. They definitely know Megan now, you know, from the and can feel and trust her, and that knows that like there's a quality control there, but also know that if anything goes down, that they have access to reach out and chat with us and chat with her and John. And so, yeah, the Substack thing and the newsletter thing, I think is so important for people. And whether or not it's Substack, it doesn't matter. I mean, just as long as I think the newsletter part of it's so important. But I do think Substack's done a pretty good job of adding a lot of cool features over the years.
I like the posts you do. I mean, you're really good at this. I think Brian K. Vaughan in the Exploding Draft one is kind of like the Rolls Royce of this, not to like tout him above you or anything, but
yeah, whatever, David.
There's like, there's all these questions he would ask, but you also ask questions where it's just like, I'm behind on my reading. What should I be reading? And then all of a sudden there's like 93 comments of people just talking about cool stuff.
It was fucking great, dude. I bought so many books from that list. So that's what I love, is that's a fucking cyclical thing, right? Like I really have not read comics in forever, and I'm gonna interact with a bunch of comic book fans, and then I'm gonna buy a bunch of fucking comics. That's awesome. Like, yeah, you know, like that. I'm asking you for things, and I'm going to put my money back into the community, and we're going to and support some other people who make it, and support all types of books. So it's not like everybody came back with like, go read X-Men, you know, like there were some really cool books that I had no idea existed. Yeah. So that was really awesome.
It was really, I mean, it's like you had people like Kelly Thompson jumping in and dropping like massive lists.
Yeah. I bought almost every book on Kelly's list. Here's the thing. Kelly knows me. So her books were like, I'm going to hit him in all his feels. I bought almost every book on her list. But like this last newsletter that Megan sent out, and it was like, we're doing a giveaway. And it was like, what's your favorite Skottie moment of 2023 that she asked? And man, there's like 300 replies.
Yeah.
She hit me up. I went to write, and I was at lunch, and she was like, hey, I'm going to make you. She was like, literally, like, I'm going to make you read these. Because she knows I don't usually dive into comments and, you know, and do a lot. But she was like, I'm going to make you read these, especially on days if you need to pick me up. And it was a day where I kind of need that. So I did roll through, and it's amazing. Like people were saying moments of this year, but then like, if they're like, oh, I met him in this year. And I mean, what a fucking weird, cool world. Like, you know, we make comic books and we read nerdy shit, and somehow like you mean things to people and they mean shit to me back because of it. And it's, man, what a cool, like weird, like hobby and passion we all jump in on.
I mean, that's the funny thing. So it's like I started this talking about how like I want to talk about all these things that you're not doing because it was interesting you're not doing them. And we barely talked about I Hate Fairyland. Like I Hate Fairyland is still going. You're doing with Brett Bean. You have like Untold Tales of I Hate Fairyland. You have multiple books going right now. But the interesting thing is like one way or another, you have this community. And I think that's really cool. Like the community thing is like, that's one of the things. I'm doing this piece right now that's on how publishers are dealing with the current environment in the direct market and stuff like that. There's a lot of facets to it, but one of them was just basically like focusing on community building, because it's like, that's the best way you can kind of build sustainability. And like, and that's not to say that you're approaching it in a cynical way. It's just like, we got to build sustainability. It's like, I want to make cool stuff, and I want people to be hyped about it, and I want to talk to them about it.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a band, you want to play your music in front of people and have them hear it. Like we make stories and make things, and we want, I mean, that's what being an artist of any form is, right? You make a thing and you want to share it. I think for so long, people got to a place where it's like we either had to be mega successful, right? You had to go out and sell 1 million. You had to go platinum the day you released your album or whatever. And obviously we're just in a place now where we're realizing that no, it can't just be your community. Like you can be locally successful. Like, if I have a band and I'm really big, I live in a city of 100 or 200,000 people, I can be successful in that area. I don't need, or in the state or whatever, or in the region. Like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I think that's what we're starting to learn. And strive for a little bit in any kind of creative world is like, oh, let's go out and find our region and our community and see what we can do within this structure. And then the exciting thing is like when your community starts going out and building the community bigger for you, because they're so excited about what's being built. So yeah, I agree. It's cool to watch that stuff happen.
That's one of the things I think is kind of underrated about, like, people talk about the 1,000 true fans theory, about like if you have those 1,000 true fans and they support you, you can survive on that. But the thing is like if you have 1,000 people who are super passionate about what you do, they're going to tell other people.
100%. And that 1,000 is going to become 2,000 pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's how your hardcore, like, because I think some people, one of the concerns about newsletters, I think, is that you kind of have this walled garden where you only talk to people who are already fans of you. You don't really have the discoverability. But the thing is word of mouth for somebody in your position is your discoverability.
It's huge, yeah. I mean, the newsletter is your first version of word of mouth because people will accidentally sign up for it or buy a thing and you're sign up for it or whatever, right? But yeah, the word of mouth is huge. And that's just old school guerrilla, that's just old school marketing where it's like, let's find the people who like us. Let's find the people who really like us. Let's reward them a little bit. And then they'll go out and work even harder, and that's the fun thing about the newsletter. And I mean, we can almost name within 5 names who will be the first 5 comments on almost any newsletter of us. And that is fucking awesome.
It reminds me of the first social network I ever joined was MySpace. And the reason why I joined it is because I wanted to become a street team member of My Chemical Romance.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if you're familiar with street teams, but that was like this whole, the word of mouth stuff. I remember.
I was going to be a music guy first. I sold mixtapes out of my backpack, so yeah.
Street teams are kind of like, it's kind of what we're talking about. It's like you're building your own street team, and I think that's pretty amazing. Last question I have for you. I mean, everything we're talking about is just basically like the following your joy of it all. You have a lot coming up, even though we don't know a lot of it, like the exact shape of it. I mean, short term, you got LA Comic-Con, you got a big 2024 coming up with new books. What has you really excited about everything you're doing coming up? Like, what keeps you going creatively? What has you jazzed right now, Skottie?
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I am pretty jazzed to attempt to finally get A Boy at the End solidified and going. It's the thing that has me really, really excited. Like,
is it because it's different?
I don't know if it's because it's different, because it doesn't feel that different to me because I've been doing it forever. Like I've been drawing him forever, but like I don't have it in here. Oh yeah, I do. But I went and had like him sculpted so I could start drawing him from, because that mask is a fucking nightmare to draw from different angles. Mm-hmm. But no, I think that it's because it will be a thing. It'll be a thing that will happen with me. I'm going to come in this room and I'm going to make it. And yeah, I'll have, probably Jean come on and color it and Nate will letter. But I just mean the crafting of the majority of it. I haven't done that in so long. So it's got me excited again to like show people a thing that was like, here, I made this thing while I was in that room, So I think it's that. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to be able to, read it's going to be a bit. I don't want to put more pressure on you, but I'm excited for everything else you have coming up. But Skottie, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on and talk about Stupid Fresh Mess, this very interesting time we're in, and everything else. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. I always enjoy talking to you. It feels like it was just a minute ago, but then also I'm like, how was it that long ago I talked to him?
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with writer-artist Skottie Young. You can find him on Instagram, his newsletter, his website at SkottieYoung.com, and his work in I Hate Fairyland and the Untold Tales of I Hate Fairyland at Image Comics. Big thanks to Deanna Chapman for stepping in and editing this podcast. If it sounds better than usual, it's because of her. Love Off Panel and want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site Sketched at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by following on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Charlie Stickney, Rick Remender, Tom Drennan, Jeremy Thomas Burke, Jared Schwab, Scott Dunn, Chip Mosher, Alan Ellsworth, Seth Pomeroy, James McEwen, Kenny Myers, Andrew Lehman, Christina Merkler, Scott Place, Darcy Van Polges, Travis Schmeiser, Tom Evans, Natalie Mockery, Reed Beeman, Kelly Sudaconic, Max Wood, Jeremy Lampert, Brian Holt, Chris Doré, Near Levy, Dennis Hoffman, Jason Hussa, Kieran Gillen, Jonathan Kent Uratam, Henry Johnson, Jingo Boren, James Steiner IV, Chris Langford, Jason Wood, Tom Peachy, Ben Domstead, Rom V, Nick Walker, Patrick Coyle, Isaac Oren, Scott Carpenter, Rent Narb Studios Comics, Capes and Tights Podcast, Klaus Vandeven, Brian, Submit Industries, Jack Mulqueen, Carl Kerschel, Robert Masella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Canadian by Proxy, Bradley Rader, Carl Troy, Brandon DePills, Patrick Brower, Declan Shalvey, Dan Carino, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, Nick Bennett, Birdcage Comics Cafe, Susanna Polo, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Stephen Holk, Philip Myra, Chris Pachalo, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Wesley Gipp, Sean Kirkham, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwatt, Vita Ayala, Akil, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Nick Polito, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogart, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Colin McMahon, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Adam Highfill, Fiona Staples, Mark Cabinet, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comic Star in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Wolfpack for letting me use their song outro as the show's opening theme, and to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's outro and ad music just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.